The new home HST rebate allows for eligible buyers up to $130,000 in total HST relief. So on a $1 million purchase, you'd be eligible for the full 13% or $130,000.
These are the types of programs that I think directly benefit home buyers. And now we're starting to see the trickle effect into the market. Hello and welcome back to the Ottawa Real Estate Podcast. My name is Paul Stevenson. I'm a Level 2 mortgage agent. I'm joined by David Warren, Level 2 mortgage agent, owner at Referral Mortgages. And we're back. Dave, how are you doing? It's July.
I'm doing fantastic. Canada had a good showing. You can't talk them down. They had a great showing, but England's
into the quarterfinals, so we're laughing. You know, Colombia's got a big game today. Colombia's playing Switzerland. It's going to be exciting, and we're buzzing. England, Norway coming up. Canada had a good showing. Unfortunately, couldn't pull it out against the Moroccans, but great for the program, Dave. Great for Canadian soccer. Great for the soccer culture in Canada. And I think with where we finished, there's a good influx of cash that goes into the Canadian program as well. I think it was 11 million or something along those lines from making the round of 32. So, I mean, for youth development, things like that, I think it's going to be great for the game and in the country, but time will tell. I mean, you know, from going 10 years ago, it would have been an absolute joke to say that Canada would be in the round of 16 of the World Cup. And, you know, we almost made the quarterfinals, which is insane.
Yeah.
So it was good to see.
Couldn't agree more. Anyways, I guess we're not a soccer podcast. We should probably,
no. But
it
is
an easy transition.
It is July. You know, it is July. A lot of people are looking for their own championships in the way of a home, looking to take the cup home. Okay, the cup's coming home to their new home. But no, we were just talking before we came on air about like a very interesting mixed bag in July. Like not as many purchases, but kind of a mixed bag of purchases, refinances, renewals. You know, people getting home equity lines of credit to maybe look at additional purchases in the future. Obviously, it's summertime, so everyone's thinking cottage and pool and like, you know, they're dreaming right now, right? This is what happens in Canada. But what are you seeing, Dave? Like, what's kind of the mix of the business, I guess, that you're seeing, and what are clients looking for right now, given the market? Because July is typically a slow month, right? But it doesn't feel that way this year.
Yeah, June was pretty busy for what I found for some purchases, but predominantly, you know, refinance transfers. So people up for renewal, refinancing at renewal and not just, you know, renewing dollar for dollar. July is kind of like you said, a mixed bag, probably half purchases, you know, half kind of people up for renewal. And August, seemingly, at least right now, all purchases. You know, time will tell. Obviously, that kind of a lot of times people close on a purchase within 45 days in a lot of cases. Like they're, you know, and especially those probably start looking again, you know, this kind of couple of weeks after kids' graduation to Canada Day. It's a lull. People took like last week off work. You know, this week they're trying to figure out that summer camps situation with the kids and trying to figure out their summer, how that looks. And then they kind of settle back down, I find, you know, within a week. And really kind of that puts it in that, you know, 45-day window to the end of August before school kicks back up. So it'll be interesting to see over the next few weeks how that purchase market picks up, you know, at least from my view of what I kind of see in the volume of calls and for our agents as well, kind of what they're seeing.
Yeah.
But I find like this, you know, again, things are cyclical. It kind of tends to repeat itself. And, you know, sometimes it can be delayed a little bit due to weather. You know, we had that earlier in the year with storms and things like that.
Yeah.
But like winter storms, that is, you know, but yeah, we'll kind of see, like I said, whether things pick up again in the next couple of weeks. How about yourself?
Yeah, I'm trying to think. Someone told us that there was a direct correlation with that snowstorm that we had. I think it was in January, February, where all the listings that were supposed to happen in that week were basically pushed. And you could see like there was a clear line as to like historical numbers during that time frame, and then everything kind of getting pushed because of the weather. So now we're seeing also a lot of people, like June 30th is kind of the ultimate closing day, right? Like lawyers always know it, mortgage brokers know it. June 30th seems to be like the most popular closing day of the year. So this time of year is always when we're dealing with a lot of people, like you said, renewing, refinancing, just kind of having that conversation because they're up for renewal from 5 years ago, 3 years ago, what have you. But I'm seeing the same thing. A lot of people inquiring about, like still a lot of people getting pre-approved right now, which is, I think, not as common. Like most people kind of get pre-approved in March, April, shop, and then close in June or July. but we're seeing everything's kind of been pushed. So same thing. July is a very mixed bag. A lot of people, I think, that were up in June and July that are refinancing, restructuring, or moving, like downsizing or upgrading. One thing I am seeing more of though now, Dave, is there are more people recently asking about new builds, like new constructions, and not
Mhm.
necessarily building their own home. I know we had Derek Saron from Westboro on the last episode talking about actually construction, but I'm talking about new builds, like from an actual, like Minto or Ridgecraft or like an actual major builder. I'm seeing more people inquire about those, and I think now we're seeing kind of the trickle effect of the rebates that were talked about at the beginning of the year. That just came into law. I know you had some more information about that, but I am seeing a lot more people ask about, or even kind of looking at new builds, and I have some purchases that are, dated out to January, February for new constructions that it wasn't that busy at the beginning of the year. Not a lot of people were considering it, but they were still opting for pre-existing homes. But now it seems more people are inquiring about kind of that, how does this rebate apply to me? What's the final price going to be? I even see people now sending me like, this is the purchase price. Here is what the builder's telling us the price will be after all of the rebates. So it seems like everyone now has a better grasp on how this is going to kind of fall into the market. But I know you had some more information. Do you want to maybe kind of shed some light on the information you have about now that it's law, like how is this going to be implemented into the market?
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it quite a while ago when it was first announced, because obviously things at the government level like to get announced without kind of having framework really in place, or a timeline in place for actually pushing out any clear information at any level of government, it seems. But it finally became law just this past week, and so they become very clear as far as like what it's going to look like, how it's going to proceed. So CRA forms for it are expected to be delivered mid-July. So here's kind of like a fast version, if you will. So the new home HST rebate allows for eligible buyers up to 130,000 in total HST relief. So on a $1 million purchase, you'd be eligible for the full 13% or 130,000. So you've got two components to that. Like any HST component, you've got provincial at 8% and federal at 5% of that total 13%. So the 80,000 or the 8% on the provincial portion is open to all eligible buyers, not just first-time home buyers. And the federal portion as well is open, but it's paid by Ontario after CRA has assessed the 8% rebate. So once they've actually assessed that first 8%, then they're rebating that 5%. So it's a little bit of like a two-tier structure, if you will. So up to $1 million, it's the full 13% rebated. 1.1 to 1.5, you're capped at 130,000. At 1.5 to 1.85 million, it's a partial rebate scaling down to 24,000. And then over 1.85, it's just the existing 24,000 rebate only that applies. So who qualifies? If the purchase agreement was signed with the builder April 1st, 2026, or between, rather, I should say, April 1st, 2026 and March 31st, 2027. So this is going to only flow for a year up until March 31st, 2027. Obviously, it's to be seen if in the future how much an uptake this is, how the real estate market, reacts to it, and obviously the builders, because the whole purpose of this is to, eat up some of the inventory that's sitting, kind of stimulating the economy in that regard, because a mass portion of our GDP is generated by the real estate market. So to be seen whether it gets extended, but as of now, it's signed purchase agreements up until March 31st, 2027. It is for your primary residence or a qualifying long-term rental. So these are multi-unit rentals open to all eligible buyers. So move-up buyers and qualified investors included, not just first-time home buyers. There's an anti-avoidance rule that applies. So if you signed a purchase agreement prior to April 2026, and you restructure the deal solely to access the rebate, you will not qualify. So they are going to be, digging into that. How they're going to be, I don't know. And I'm not saying that anyone should be doing this anyways, but they are going to be looking for those anti-avoidance rules. And the unfortunate thing is if you signed in like March or February, that you will not qualify. So because the CRA documents are only coming out mid-July, and they say mid-July, again, hopefully CRA actually produces them on time. So after mid-July, the buyer will assign the rebate to the builder at closing. So the 8% component is going to be credited against the purchase price. and the builder will recover it as part of their HST filing with CRA. The 5% Ontario top up is separate. So it's paid directly to Ontario, not CRA, and triggered by the buyer's consent on a specific CRA form and released only after the 8% is assessed. So it's typically taking about 30 days later. So on closing, they're applying the 8%, you're paying the 5%, it seems, and then you're getting it credited back at a later date. Typically it's saying within 30 days, no HST up front, but the 5% follows on a delay. Before closing forms are available, the buyer pays HST up front and applies directly to CRA. Once the forms are released, no entitlement is lost. The rebate applies retroactively to April 1st. So, really, like they have some dates now. The earliest eligible is retroactive to April 1st. CRA forms, like I said, they're saying mid-July. They haven't given a date because obviously government and CRA tends to miss deadlines. So we'll see what that looks like. I know up until now, some of the major banks have been treating it as, just like I mentioned, you paid at closing and then you apply after the fact. So I know one of the major banks in particular, they all have to go on what's on the purchase agreement. So even if you're paying it up front, getting rebated later, and you've already closed on a property or you're about to, you're going to pay it up front and you're going to file to CRA to get that rebated at a later date. So, really in essence, if somebody bought $1 million property with the minimum down, which would be $75,000, and your purchase price is $1 million, you could be, that's what your mortgage would be based on with a $75,000 down payment and getting rebated $130,000, which is kind of crazy. You'd actually be over that 100% LTV, if you will, and actually have your full, if you happen to close already and all that, and you happen to put that minimum down at $1 million, you're actually getting your full down payment like back in your pocket and then some, which, if you look at, most banks, you're eligible for anywhere from 15 to 20% that you can put as a total lump sum as a prepayment privilege. So, people could take that 130 and put it right down on that mortgage to pay it down as well right away without any sort of penalty too. So, it's certainly something that people want to look at, but really that they don't have to if they don't want to. They can kind of do what they want. So it's kind of a little wild, wild west right now up until those CRA forms are released. But yeah, at least there's a little bit of clarity on timing.
Yeah, these are the types of programs that I think directly benefit home buyers. And I think, we've seen this was announced, I think in January, February, we were saying, and, took effect end of March. And now we're kind of waiting to see, now we're starting to see the trickle effect into the market. I see this being one of those things where January, February of 2027, alarms start going off. You only have 60 days left or 30 days left to get in, and we're going to see a big rush into those new constructions. So I think builders are probably also preparing for, there's always a lag, right, between when these things are announced and when they actually are understood and when they're implemented. And when we look at this in contrast to what's happening in BC, where the government is literally subsidizing builders to help, I guess, reduce their losses per se, this seems like a better way to do it versus the government basically buying back those buildings, right, from builders. Have you heard from any local builders or builders in the Ottawa region? How are they responding to this, or what's kind of the sentiment on the other side of the fence as far as how this is impacting sales and so on?
Well, I know I spoke with one realtor 2 weeks ago, and there was a new project in, I believe it's Perth, and there was a lineup for their release for their new construction properties, in Perth. And so
Great
that's
town, by the way. No.
yeah. I believe it's Perth. It's Perth, in that region, and I believe it was Perth. But there was a lineup at the builder's office on the day of release. Supposedly it was because a lot of people wanted some specific lots that they were releasing. But regardless, I haven't really heard of many lineups at a builder's site in quite some time. I think to your point, some of those properties that I know I've spoken to a number of people that have been waiting for a little bit more clarity and for, it to in fact become law, like that it's not, a rug pull, if you will, on, this announcement, and really kind of waiting to upsize and go from, they can save, $130,000 on their purchase. They're like, yeah, that makes sense to us. So we are going to upsize, put our house on the market, for, 750,000 or whatever it is. I mean, even if you take the average single detached home price of 720, listed at that, and you're buying $1 million home that really is only costing you 870, and you're able to get, new product, bigger home, whatever it may be, like, that's attractive for people. And I think that that will really kind of push people. I think, we'll start now that it's starting to get announced, of it becoming law, that will maybe see that uptick over the next couple of months.
Yeah.
I think to your point as well, later in the year to early next year, that it'll be interesting to see if builders kind of build up supply, because people are very also impulsive and
Yeah.
impatient. They
That's
want
what
to
I'm
walk.
saying. I
They
think
want to
there'll be,
walk through the property.
yeah.
That's why resale does so well. People want to buy it and close on it immediately. They don't want to wait years in advance for something to close and be able to move in on. So I think it'll be interested to see if any inventory builds up, which will have, I think two sides of the coin. It'll be giving buyers options that they can move into right away. But as well, when there's inventory, if it's not being snapped up right away, that, there will be still that room for negotiation, but it's going to certainly help the builders and help them move inventory, help them, move things along. I know the trades have been really suffering as well in a lot of the areas. So, really kind of boosting that industry too. So I think it will be helpful, and it will be a program that it does actually have uptick, as opposed to some of the others that have, they haven't done anything.
Yeah, and speaking to that urgency, I don't know if it's builders like really pushing when the buildings are actually complete, but usually when we get a new construction, it's kind of, 18 months out or 12 months out, and we're kind of just prepping them for what will be in the future. But recently with new constructions, I'm seeing people actually have closings in August or in September. So these are homes that are actually
Mm.
at their 97% complete, and the builders are kind of really, really pushing or maybe reducing the price, and people are kind of taking advantage of that inventory. But this is kind of, I was saying about like my projection for like early 2027 is that everyone's going to see kind of the countdown to the end of this rebate. And there's going to be a lot of urgency in those starting months of 2027 where people are going to be like, oh my gosh, we got to sign this contract before April 1st so that we can make sure that we benefit from this rebate. But I personally think if this is a successful program, that we'll probably see it extended for another year or 6 months or what have you, if the builders want to see that and the government agrees that this is stimulating the market and helping kind of churn, as we were talking to the economist recently, that, to churn the market, right? And just kind of get people, get these homes moving in these builders so that there's not kind of stagnation in the market and in development.
Yeah. And I mean, it really does, help other levels of government as well. Like yes, you might not be collecting that HST up front, but on new home construction, you're then collecting on land transfer tax. You're collecting on new property tax for that municipality. Like there are other ways in which, the government is still benefiting from, without kind of that added tax, or stimulating the economy that you have now, that many more thousands or tens of thousands of people being employed, whether that be manufacturing of appliances, manufacturing of the materials required within the home, and the tradespeople. There's a massive amount of industry in all different facets of people and that benefit from. So, it increases incomes, it increases, that income tax base that the government's collecting, things like that. So it's really increasing that GDP, which, really, yes, we could look at and say they're losing out on that 130,000 per home, which is what I know, there's that headline of whatever it is, the cost of this program, that if they just kind of take that and that's their estimate, but what it actually does to stimulate the economy in all facets of level of government in other ways will be beneficial, because there's a lot of countries that demonstrate you don't need to overtax your population to still get a high tax base.
Yeah, I completely agree. That's you hit the nail on the head. Like in Canada, anytime a dollar changes hands, it's taxed, right? So if you're employing more people, there's more homes moving, there's more trade work happening, there's more production, there's tax all along the way. So whether they're getting it in one lump sum from that HST or they're getting it from all these other sources, like you said, income tax and sales tax and everything else, it's going to potentially actually increase the amount of tax they're receiving, but still benefit the home buyers and churn the market the way that we'd hope to see. Are you thinking of buying or selling a residential property? Relationships are at the heart of every real estate transaction at Gertin-Poirier Avocat Lawyers. We love to bring residential buyers, sellers, agents, lenders, mortgage brokers, and the law together to close the deal for you for an effortless client experience that opens doors. Call us at 613-744-4488 or visit our website at gertinpoirierlaw.ca. Let's get to the heart of your deal. Your home is one of your biggest investments, and the team at Big Westboro can help you protect it. Our expert brokers will find the perfect coverage to keep your home and belongings safe. Call 613-239-5792 or visit thebig.ca/Westboro for a free quote. Think big, protect what matters most. Even the best photographer can't hide drywall dust and paint splatter. And every day you delay listing could mean missing peak spring pricing in Ottawa. A to Z Cleaning Expert gets your property truly photo ready. Don't risk going to market half ready. Mention TowRep at atozcleaningexpert.com to receive priority scheduling for your next listing. The June stats are out, Dave, and I want to just touch on those quickly because we didn't actually, I think when the May stats came out, we didn't actually speak directly to them. So here's the June stats, and I know you have the May stats. They're pretty much stagnant. Like May to June, the numbers are almost identical. I'll go over the June numbers here that everyone can see on the screen. So the benchmark price for June was $720,000 on the dot. And I think in May it was 723. Like
723, 800. So you go through the June, I'll compare, and I'll chime in with the May as the comparison.
So new listings in June, 3,110. That's new listings.
May 3,351. So 150 different.
And then days on market in June, 22 days, which is still extremely low, but we know there's still some tomfoolery happening there, Dave, with the, relisting and taking it off and relisting and so on. But 22 days on market in June, and I think it was
20 in May. So like a slight uptick in June, but
active listings in June, 4,982.
And in May, 4,917 active listings. So basically,
pretty much exact same.
Yeah.
Benchmark price for apartments, 384,500.
And then 385,500 in May.
So yeah, no difference. Properties sold in June, 1,518.
1,616 in May. So again, right across the board, it's been pretty kind of flatlined, if you will, between both May and June.
But if you look at looking at the year over year stats here on the screen, like if you look at all like new listings, months of inventory, active listings, all on an uptick, like between 23, 24, 25, and 26, it's been a steady increase year over year for all of those metrics. So it seems as though the market is very active. The prices have gone up. I mean, it's obviously pretty much stagnant right now from May to June, but I think July and August we'll probably see everything stay around the same. And then as usual, September, October, we'll start to see that slight increase in the home prices. But is there anything in here, Dave, that is like surprising given that it's June, and June is historically, as we can see in those kind of year over year stats, June is typically much slower than it currently is?
Yeah, I mean, the condo and single family home pricing remaining stagnant, I think is interesting. I want to say the beginning of the year, we started out around, I think, like 695, 698. So we've seen an uptick in price point, I should say, like average benchmark. And then the months of inventory, 3.3, that's, kind of that typical 3 months of inventory is what is kind of used as being a balanced market. So seeing the 3.3 months of inventory, kind of, again, shows that we're still in that balanced market. There are still a number of properties, obviously, by those active listings, and we can see the uptick in active listings and new listings, that there are still quite a lot of options out there. It's not like too active of a market, but then at the same time, those days on market figure of 20 and 22 is, is pretty low. Like you're really, you're 3 weeks on market.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, you can have that list price change, relist, what have you, but there's still properties being absorbed, and so which would maintain that 3 weeks on market.
Yeah, and the last thing I wanted to touch on, Dave, that we're getting asked obviously every day. Every conversation is in some part focused around the rate and the current rate environment until maybe since 7-8 years ago when the variable rate was substantially lower than the fixed. I've never had more people inquire about variable rates right now, just because there's such a delta still between the variable and fixed. In some cases, it's upwards of 0.75% difference between a variable and fixed. And I mean, at that point, it's an absolute no-brainer to go variable just because of the ability to convert it into fixed and so on. But one thing I wanted to point out is that, the bonds are still holding around that 3% range, which obviously directly correlate to the fixed rates. But crude oil, which was at, 120 a month and a half ago, is under $70 now. And typically when that oil price comes down, we see the bond prices come down and then fixed rates usually follow. But it seems as though the bonds and the fixed rates are being stickier than they were previously. Like, where do you see the rates going in the next, say, 2-3 months, given that the market is, a bit calmer right now? I mean, we're seeing it active, but generally speaking, June, July, and August are slower months, and rates typically drop in the spring, not in the summer. So, like, what do you think, or what do you anticipate is going to happen with the crude oil coming down, but bonds staying elevated?
I mean, I think crude oil pricing, and I think as you said, it is less, the per barrel is less than when the conflict in Iran started up 3.5 months ago. And I think it's going to come down even further and simply be like OPEC Plus is meeting today, I believe, to increase their production levels now that the strait is opened up, and obviously the world is in need of, an increase in oil. So we've seen pricing of crude come down, but we haven't seen it obviously at the pump, directly relayed on. That, I believe, is just more so what is out there for supply for the producers, and it hasn't flowed. Yes, pricing has come down because of the strait opening up and all that, but there's still not the amount of available oil for, at the pump, if you will. There's still that shortage. So as that production level increases, we're going to start to see our, cost at the pumps come down, which will mean that inflation figures will not remain sticky. It was obviously at the last rate announcement, Bank of Canada, they spoke about if the war continues and persists, we're going to have that stickier inflationary number due to oil prices impacting inflation. Who would have figured? And so that would, obviously make it more challenging of whether the Bank of Canada has to do something with rates or not. I think with the, that war seemingly ending, the strait opening up, oil flowing, that the oil prices having come down, we just haven't seen it at the pump yet, which will trickle through. I think we're going to see the bonds come down. We were in the high threes for 5-year fixed rates on the insured side pre-war. And, we are trending that way. We've had 3 weeks of kind of pretty stable bond markets, the bonds, on that Canadian mortgage bond. So I think as that kind of trickles through, that supply opens up, we'll start to see the bonds kind of come back down, and thus the fixed rates. And I think those that are taking variable are, number one is like hedging. There is that spread like you spoke about. And I know we've talked about it ad nauseum in previous episodes that, being able to convert to
everyone who listens weekly.
Yeah. Being able to convert to a fixed rate at any time, they're able to just watch how those fixed rates kind of come down, and with the plan of locking in to a fixed at a later date. But I think really over the next couple of months, we'll start to see those fixed rates come down. I think there was a number of economists that said when they actually open up the strait, it's going to take about 6 months for, it to really ripple through the economy.
Yeah.
So we'll see if it happens sooner. But like you said, right now, at the pump and at the banks, they're taking a little bit of extra profit right now is what I see.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Ow.
Dave, should we get into some mood boosts?
Let's do it.
Okay. I got 3 today. Number 1, what do mermaids use to wash their fins? Tide.
Oh, wow.
You know what? I can't remember if these are the same ones I used with Derek, but I'm gonna say them as if they're new because you haven't heard them. Number 2, I finally sold my vacuum the other day. All it was doing was collecting dust. Last but not least, Sunday was a sad day, but the day before was a Saturday. Shawa. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Thank you for listening. Thank you to our amazing sponsors. Every Wednesday, 10 a.m., we'll be here. We'll be back.
Go England.
Go England. Reach out to
Go Columbia.
You ever have questions about mortgages? Dave and I are here. We're happy to help. And we thank you for listening. We'll be back next week. See you soon.
Deuces.